What's the best way to deal with punctures while out in the wilderness? For decades, the obvious choice has been to take a pump with you, and these pumps nowadays have got really good. They're really light, they're really small, and they can deal in much higher pressures than they used to. These are still a really good option, and to be honest, that's what I use most of the time. I have a pump strapped to all of my bikes so I can head out and know I've always got one with me. There's not much in the way of cons with a pump, really. Obviously, there's a little bit of weight involved, but you're going to need to take something with you to reinflate your tyres. They work time and time again, and if you buy a good quality one, they should last a very long time. And like I said, they've got really small and really light now, so most of the time they're so discreet that most people won't even notice you've got one. Not like the olden days where you'd have a massive one that was strapped to the side of your frame. Then along came CO2 canisters, and these were little canisters of compressed CO2 that's in a liquid state, and you could stick them in your top tube bag or your saddle bag. They're quite small, and they were there if you needed to pump up your tyre quickly. But they do come with quite a lot of drawbacks. The first is they're very wasteful. Once you've used them, they are one-hit wonders. You end up just throwing them away, so they go to landfill, or if you're savvy, you might be able to recycle them, but I would wager most people just throw them straight in the dustbin. You've probably seen them strewn along the side of the road or by cycling trails, which is really not very nice to look at. In fact, in a local woodland the other day, I saw piles and piles of those CO2 canisters and beer cans. Must be a puncture hotspot or something. And secondly, they don't always work. If you get it slightly wrong, if you don't attach the nozzle on properly, or if you slightly miss the inner tube, you can waste all of your CO2 and find that it's not really done the job properly. And finally, the obvious one if you've used one before is that they get really, really cold. The reason they get so cold is because the CO2 is turning from liquid to gas. It requires energy to do that, and it absorbs it from the canister and from the surrounding area, and that's why it gets bitterly cold. So I used to use CO2 canisters nearly all the time back when I did mostly road riding, but I've moved back to a pump for those reasons that I mentioned. They're a little bit faffy, and I can trust the pump. It's reliable. I know it's not going to go wrong when I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I just want something that's going to work. But nowadays technology has moved on so much. Are there better options out there? With the improvement of battery technology, a lot of companies are moving into the small electric pump market that you can fit into your top tube bag or your saddle bag. And I've got a couple of options that I want to look at today to see whether or not it's worth investing in. So we're going to look at these two options. There's the Flextail Bike Pump Mini and the Cycplus AS2 Pro Max. So let's start with the Flextail pump. This is the cheaper of the two at £68. It's also the lighter of the two. It's only 110 grams. It takes 25 minutes to charge this to full, and on that it can do two 700C 25mm tyres up to 100 psi, which isn't that much, to be honest, especially if you're running fatter tyres. In reality, you're probably only going to get one or two pumps out of this before you have to recharge it again. But for a day ride or a weekender, this is probably going to be absolutely fine. How easy is it to use? There's only one button on it. You just hold it and press it again. After that, it keeps pumping until you reach the sort of pressure that you're after. Like I say, you can only do 100 psi though, so anything over that, you're not going to be able to do with this pump. For most of us bikepacking though, that is way more pressure than you're ever going to need. Quality wise, this is really good. I've got one of their other pumps, the Zero pump, which I use for my sleeping mats, and it's like that. It works really, really well. Very good build quality, and it's even got a little silicone protective case around it to stop you from scratching it when it's in your bike or if it's in your pocket. You charge it using USB-C, and like I mentioned before, it takes 25 minutes to get it from zero to full. Any other interesting features? Well, it does actually have one. It can be used as a rear light if needed. It's got a red blinking mode, so if your rear light goes, you've got the additional safety feature of having that as an option. So moving on to the Cycplus AS2 Pro Max. This is much bigger than the Flextail option, and it's also more expensive. This is £102 versus the £68 of the Flextail. As you can probably imagine, it weighs more as well. The weight of this is 200 grams versus the 110 grams of the Flextail. The reason this is bigger and heavier is because it has more power. It can do way more than the Flextail. It can actually do over twice as much. It can do 4 700C 25mm tyres up to 120 psi. This has a higher pressure rating. Again, it's USB-C, and it takes an hour to charge this fully. The thing that sets this apart though is the fact that it has a pressure gauge and a screen. You can choose the pressure that you want by pressing the plus and the minus buttons, and once you get it to the sort of pressure that you're after, You just press go and it will automatically pump up the tyre to that pressure, and as soon as it reaches it, it cuts out, so you know you're done. It's just as easy to use as the Flextail as well. You just set your pressure with the up and down button, press go, and that's it, you're done. It's equally very good quality. It also comes with a silicone case as well to protect it. It feels very robust. It isn't waterproof though, neither is the Flextail. It's probably worth mentioning. Because it has an open USB-C port, you can't leave it out in the rain. It will get wet and it will destroy it. You can't use this one as a rear light like you can the Flextail, but it does have one very cool feature. Because it's so powerful, it can do any bike tyre, including fat bike tyres and even motorbike tyres. So if you do either of those things, this is the option you should go for. One thing to mention about both these pumps though is that they are quite loud, a lot louder than you doing it the old-fashioned way. But if you're in the middle of nowhere, what's a bit of noise? So bottom line, are these worth investing in? I would say so. The only thing that's troubling me though is that I'm always going to take a manual pump with me anyway, because although these are really great electric pumps, there's still a chance that they could go wrong. The battery could go if I could forget to charge it, or the motor could die, or it could get completely soaked and I find that it doesn't work anymore. So the only quandary I have is, why do I need to take an electric pump if I've got a manual one with me? It's probably because I will be feeling lazy and I just want to pump up the tyre without having to do anything. But other than that, there isn't really a need for them. It's just a nice thing to have. I suppose the only other reason is that you've got a fail-safe. It's like an insurance policy. So if one of them breaks, you have the other to rely on. As always, if you're interested in those products, there will be a link in the description to buy them. But thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment if you've got any questions, and I'll see you in the next video.